It's Melissa Peters here with DORN Companies, coming to you pain-free live to help you live pain and injury-free. Thanks for tuning in today for another episode of the Injury Prevention Academy, brought to you by DORN Companies, the country's leading wellness-based pain management and injury prevention company, committed to reducing costs of healthcare, workers' compensation, and lost productivity, resulting in $100 million in savings over the last 20 years for our clients. Joining us today is Dr. Anthony Harris, who is board certified in occupational and environmental medicine and Chief Innovation Officer at WorkCare. Dr. Harris has expertise in the use of wearable technology and clinical algorithms to identify and reduce musculoskeletal injury risk. So, Dr. Anthony Harris, thank you so much for taking time to join me today. How's it going over there?
Hey, it's going great here. We're excited to be presenting here with you, answering questions about ergonomics and wearable technology, and how we're leapfrogging, the ergonomics of old, if you would.
I look forward to it. I always enjoy learning about the brave new world that we're venturing into, but truly the benefits that it brings to us. So, to dive right in, I want to kind of start off broad. So, DORN, as a company, we offer a variety of technologies: wearables, desktop ergonomics, mobility apps, and fatigue monitoring systems. So,
Mhm.
when people out there are trying to grasp all these technologies that are coming into the safety space, what role, number one, do they play in safety programs? And how does one navigate all that's out there and make decisions?
Sure. So, when we've been doing this for a number of years now, right, in terms of wearable technology, and we advise companies not just on the wearables around ergonomics, but what is your general approach to adopting new technologies into solving your environmental health and safety problems? And so, the first and foremost need is to fully define the problem you're trying to solve first, right? So, the understanding dramatically and in a detailed fashion that here is my pain point. Here is my specific problem. Here are some of the metrics I'm looking to modify in my environmental health and safety program, and then set out to look for a solution in technology to solve that problem. Many times, unfortunately, we kind of put the cart before the horse in that we see a new piece of technology and think backwardly, okay, how can I adapt this technology to help me solve problems? But no, it's the other way around, right? It really is understanding first the problem, defining it to the nth degree, and then seeking the appropriate technology to meet that need. And that's basically why you need DORN, right? Because you all are expertise at DORN to really help customers understand and see the landscape of the EHS environment, and then appropriately adopting those technologies in a plug and play fashion.
I appreciate that. I know technology can sometimes seem foreign and overwhelming. So the fact that perhaps we just rely on our usual decision making process skills and make sure if we have a problem, we can seek a solution. So, speaking of one particular solution, I know in addition to your day job, you're quite an entrepreneur out there, and so you were a co-founder of HFit, which I believe stands for Harris Fitness. So I
Mhm.
want to hear a little bit about where the idea for HFit came from and what your motivation behind this venture was, which I think has to do with finding that pain point and looking to solve it.
You're exactly right, right? So HFit was born back in 2016, and it was to solve specifically pain I was experiencing in the clinic. I was running at that point in northern Indiana, 7 clinics, and those clinics were all focused in on occupational health. How are we, helping our workforce in those geographics? And day in and day out, I was seeing, guys and gals coming in with injuries, musculoskeletal, rotator cuff tears, you name it. And we could have done more to help prevent them, right? And to the effect of, it is the number one type of workplace injury nationwide, musculoskeletal injuries, and it's costing $55 billion a year in direct costs, right? And so, a little bit of direct costs and some indirect costs in that number as well. But we thought to ourselves, I thought to myself, and actually while driving to work, I used to commute 4 hours round trip a day. I said we got to be able to do better, and I want to be able to deliver true prevention, generate leading indicators for injury risk, right, for musculoskeletal, and be able to deliver that back to not just the employee but to the employer, so they can either engineer out the hazard or come up with solutions again like DORN to help mitigate those risks. And we did so by turning to wearable technology.
Yes, and from my understanding, when it comes to this, it really allows for a greater objective understanding of what's going on. So I don't want to knock traditional ergonomics programs. Obviously, they play a role and are important in the workplace. But
Mhm.
can you speak to some of the shortcomings of traditional ergonomics program and how wearable technology helps to address those shortcomings and fill gaps that might exist?
You bet. Sure. So if we look at traditional ergonomics, right, and I'm harkening back to sitting in my master's level ergonomics courses, right, at University of Illinois Chicago, and looking at what was the kind of cutting edge of technology as it stood for evaluating ergonomically an individual's risk, right, or a job specific risk profile. And we were using techniques like REBA and RULA, rapid upper body assessments. We were using Snook tables and NIOSH lifting equations, right? Those are fundamentals, and those will still always have a place in ergonomics. However, what we did not have at our fingertips is a way to evaluate what are the true forces involved in, and what are the true angular, almost momentums, right, involved in evaluating these jobs, but doing it at scale, right? And so if I'm doing a classic ergonomic analysis, it's very static in nature, right? I can use a push pull gauge in order to understand the forces, but one, frankly, the interface between a push pull gauge and a human hand is different, right? Who has a hook for a hand? No one, right? And so in that, we're losing some fidelity to the data. And we're not doing that assessment while people are doing their normal job typically. We'll go out and assess a job, and certainly I've done my share of traditional ergonomic analysis. But when we do that assessment, it's not while workers are performing their normal job typically. We have to kind of simulate it in some type of lab, or we're stopping work and we're doing the assessment not directly on the individual. And so, how we flip that upside down, right? If we classically look at ergonomics and say we've done an analysis of the environment, right, to understand the impact that it's having to the human body, we currently have reversed that with wearable technology. And we're describing the impact from the environment by directly measuring the physiology of the individuals, right? And so the paradigm shift is huge. And it's substantial because now no longer do we have to approximate what is the impact to the human body. We're able to directly measure it and then again extrapolate how the environment is impacting the individuals as well as solving the problem. So oftentimes when you come up with an ergonomic solution, it's difficult to prospectively understand what the impact is going to be to the human body, right? We know that if we decrease force, yes, we may decrease the amount of harm, if you would, or stress to the human body. But now, again, we can directly measure stress, forces, of the individuals while they're doing their normal job using wearable technology. And then as we make changes rapidly, iteratively, understand how those changes are benefiting or in some cases causing unintended consequences in terms of physiologic demands. And so it's been a huge leap forward for us in the clinical realm, and I know it's benefited numerous companies that we've been working with DORN.
Yes, and it sounds like it really brings benefits to the employers. I know I came across a number while preparing to speak with you today about the fact that the traditional programs typically don't address at least 15 to 20% of the workforce, and that 20% could be driving 80% of those injuries and those costly musculoskeletal disorders. So, when you're speaking with employers and to the listeners out there, what are some main major reasons, on top of, and perhaps it is just related to the objectivity, of investing in technology such as wearables? And what are some logistics around it? Why might some employers be hesitant about adoption? And what's it like in real practice?
Sure. So I'll talk first about the kind of key benefits, right, to the wearable technology. And you spoke to them briefly there. It's the individualization of our approach to ergonomics, right? So if I have the best in class traditional ergonomics program, it's all based on, that normalization Gaussian curve, right? Trying to get the majority of the people underneath that curve and understand the risks to them. And that's where you mentioned that even the best programs will statistically not capture the risks for 15 to 20% of the worker population, right? And that's just by design. And so, what we're able to do with this approach is individualize the understanding of risk to each individual. Again, the same thing we've been doing in individualization of clinical medicine to improve outcomes. That's exactly what we're able to do now. And we're able to do it because technology is scalable, right? You don't have to hire 5 ergonomists to service your worker population of 1,000 or 5,000. A mighty few with technology can now service thousands of employees because we're using technology that can be applied at scale at a cost point that's reasonable and affordable. And so when we're talking about the advantages, those clearly stand heads and tails above traditional ergonomics, being able to do what we couldn't do before. In terms of the best practices and how we do it, so that we're successful in our program in implementing not just this type of wearable technology for ergonomics, but basically any type of big brother type technology, right? What we learned early on is to have conversations with your employees up front and tell them why you're moving towards this particular technology and the benefits that they're going to reap, right? Reduction in injuries, being able to go home the way you came in terms of shoulder, back, etc. And then also talking about the data in particular, right? There's a lot of concern around data privacy. And so having the conversation up front, and we won over 50,000 member unions with these type of conversations up front with adoption of wearables, in that we're going to tell the employees how we're going to use the data, and we're going to tell them exactly how we're not going to use the data. Because first and foremost, people get concerned about, is this a way to eliminate my job? Is this a way to prevent me from doing my job? Fitness for duty type profiling, and that's not what the technology should be used for out the gate. It should be used to do primary prevention and to do modification of jobs such that they're less demanding physically and impart less risk on individuals. And so some of those best practices have served well in terms of helping programs come online and win over employees early on.
Excellent. I understand all too well. I think we live in a world where everything feels like it's being monitored, and at the end of the day, asking ourselves, so what are you going to do with this? So,
Mm-hmm.
speaking about when you introduce this to employees, I just want to get a little bit, just briefly into, what it's like just operationally. Is this something I'm wearing all day at work? Is it, 20 minutes? Kind of what's the game plan once I have this suit on?
Sure. And so that's some of the best practice as well in general with adoption of technology, particularly wearable technology, is non-continuous use, right? Because once you talk about and come into a facility and say, look, workers, we're going to slap this on you and you're going to wear it 24/7, right? Obviously, you're going to get a lot of red flags in terms of pushback on big brotherism, right? And so what we've learned and how we've developed this service together is to do just momentary assessment, right? And so, in the same way we used to have a momentary assessment of an ergonomic evaluation, that's exactly what we're doing with the wearable technology. So that within 15 minutes, you slap on the suit, we calibrate each suit to each individual so that the suit knows its wearer. It knows your specific muscle makeup because we're all different, right? And we have different sizes of the suits as well. And then we're able to send that individual out and have them do their job. And it can be as short as 15, 20 minutes of doing their job that we capture enough data to understand their risk to shoulder, to back, to knee, to hip, the whole nine, right? And certainly the more tasks or jobs you want to do analysis for will lengthen the amount of observation time. But certainly with the wearable technology, we're talking, minutes to hours. And if you're, ambitious, you want to profile your entire line of work, we're talking a couple of days, and then you're done. And that analysis doesn't need to reoccur unless you're on some type of best practice schedule, every 6 months, yearly, etc., for a continuous improvement program. And certainly we've done those and have worked out well.
Thank you. That really helps me have a picture in mind of what this would really look like. Because sometimes when it comes to technology, it can seem so complex, but that really
Mhm.
broke it down for me. And I want to switch gears a little bit now into what other technology fronts are on the horizon and their role in safety. So, particularly, what role do you see artificial intelligence and virtual reality playing in ergonomics and safety now currently, and also the role they'll play as we progress, more and more down the technology road?
Sure. So we'll talk about AI first, artificial intelligence, and so it's certainly a really impactful technology, potentially something that we've already started adopting in what we do. For example, we now can layer on, and we have been layering on just a visual analysis using AI of a worker wearing the suit while they're performing their normal job, and the AI senses the different body angles of the individual, so that not only are we doing the more advanced physiologic based analysis from an ergonomic standpoint with the suit and the wearable technology, but we can also rapidly provide using the AI a automated REBA, an automated ruler, etc. Based upon those body angles that are being pulled from the same video that's being utilized for the wearable technology for that particular job. So it's layering on the AI piece that's been able to advance us even further than where we started out, years back. And then other AI is going to be critical in detecting. And again, we participated with Google in a project to help try to understand our data more fully and articulate it in a way that now we're looking for muscular patterns that we, with our naked eye as clinicians, can't even evaluate, right? And we can then understand using AI if you have this particular pattern of muscle firing and combination thereof, it does increase your risk for shoulder injury, for example, right? But those type of observations are only possible because of AI and the number of data points. We're talking millions of data points just for one job evaluation, right? And so that type of AI is very powerful to help us do that type of analysis and provide that type of benefit. When we talk about like virtual reality and augmented reality, those are going to be game changers as well, right? Because now we can not just simulate the job, we can actually measure directly the job, right? And then reproduce that in a simulation like VR or augmented reality. And then we can see what changes can be made and measure those changes in an environment that's safe, right? And so the VR, AR components to it will be very powerful as we layer them with the muscle activity. For example, if I reach out, right, and I'm turning the valve, I can be doing that in real life, but at the same time, see the muscle activation real time and augment my body mechanics, right? We know DORN is really phenomenal at doing biomechanics coaching. Now imagine using AR and VR to deliver that coaching and being able to see live the dynamic changes of the individual being coached and imagining doing it now where you have a green zone and a red zone, right? You turn this way, you move this way, and you contract your muscles as you're performing your job, and you're in the green zone. But if you do it another way, you bend inappropriately, you're in the red zone. And that feedback is possible because of can be possible because of AR, and the interface between human machine is now seamless. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to integrate these type of technologies as we move forward. And rest assured, we'll be the ones to bring it to you.
That sounds fascinating. And now that we've glimpsed into the future, I want to bring us back to current circumstances because I
Sure.
don't think we can have a conversation in this time without addressing it. So we know a lot of workers working from home, strange situations. So, from what you've heard from clients and just various, people who you've been exposed to, what are some major ergonomic challenges facing remote workers or workers in general? And what are some advice that you have? And what role might technology play in making sure that we're still taking care of our workers the way we need to be?
Sure. So for those workers staying at home, home-based ergonomic programs are phenomenal, right? We need them, and people have traditionally probably ignored the home environment in terms of how do we make it safer for us who are having to stay at home and work remotely to perform our jobs, right? And we've seen an increase in the demand for home ergonomic evaluations, etc. And obviously, technology being key there for having the video interface to do the analysis remotely of that ergonomic setup for the home office, perhaps, right? When we talk about then remote workers and the workforces that are the critical workers, the essential critical workers that have been working throughout this pandemic, they're seeing increased demand, right? Because there's potentially fewer workers because of the impact from COVID-19. And so we want to make sure we're leveraging technology, and we're doing this now doing remote analysis from an ergonomic standpoint using wearable technology of those critical workers and making sure that first and foremost we're understanding the demands of that job to keep those few workers that are still out there safe. Because again, we were experiencing decreased numbers in the workforce due to COVID. If we lose one person, that could be a game changer in terms of detriment to the operations of a business. And having the right parameters in place to do that initial primary prevention is going to be key for maintaining our workforce as we continue through this pandemic for sure. But certainly, we see now that a lot of the EHS folks that have had to shift because of necessity due to COVID into managing COVID for their company are now hitting a point where they're able to start to piece back into their normal job. And the ergonomics now and the adoption of wearable technology because it allows more efficiency of those critical few that are able to do so in EHS, scale themselves beyond having to hire and find new talent. They're leveraging and turning to technology. And to be honest, let's face it, COVID has moved forward adoption of technology in almost every industry when it comes to remote work, right? And so it's going to be a obviously benefit to us who have been moving towards wearable technology and remote observation, remote analysis of the workforce, because now people are going to be partial used to it. And it's going to be in the lexicon of those from the C-suite down to the frontline worker. And that's a good thing.
Yes, so that actually works well, and not to get too somber, and COVID notwithstanding, though I agree with you, I think it's been a catalyst into this push for technology. We've seen things just move so quickly as we've all innovated and adapted. But I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask you, what's potentially lost through this, greater reliance on technology and the reduction in human interaction? So, for example, if there are workers out there maybe who are working remotely or even on site who maybe are a little more wary of technology, who prefer direct face-to-face interactions, are we
Mm-hmm.
possibly risking alienating or missing out on particular segments of workers?
Well, I think that's always a risk, right? We know that certainly those who don't have access to technology are going to, potentially fall through the cracks, right? In terms of being able to do the level of prevention that we can possibly do with those who do have access. And certainly we have those demographics. So we work with a lot of Amish, right, in northern Indiana, and we have to make sure we're cognizant to how do we serve them and how do we serve them well when we're not talking about the ability to have access to technology. So that is critical, and we will miss, unfortunately, if we don't pay close attention, we will miss opportunities there. And in addition to that aspect of it, there is definitely a piece of what we do at DORN, what we do in EHS that requires us to be there, right? To physically and do an analysis, to physically touch in that clinical touch, if you would. And that philosophy is not unique to just what we do here in this industry, but it goes back to, and I'm reminded of a phrase called Gichi Genbutsu. It's Japanese for go and see, right? Taiichi Ono, as he developed lean, kind of the basis for our lean improvement, lean manufacturing, etc., kind of coined that term so that we understand you still have to go and see where the pain points are physically, to get a full picture of what's going on and how best to solve that particular pain point. And so, if we're again not cognizant of that dynamic and that reality, we will miss opportunities to move us forward from a preventative standpoint.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. That's all I have for you today. And I am so appreciative of your time and all that wonderful information. To all you out there listening and viewing, we appreciate you and thank you for taking to the time to join us. And hope you guys tune in for the next episode. So thank you so much, Anthony, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, and my pleasure.